Shalom and welcome to the One Pasuk podcast, in which three rabbis from Englewood, New Jersey, each share an insight on one particular pasuk from the Parsha and reflect on each other's ideas. This week we'll feature our once-a-month episode on relationships in the Parsha with my better half, my wife Shoshana, a teacher and school administrator for 20 years who transitioned her career to become a social worker specializing in couples and individual therapy, all while serving as a dedicated rebbitzin. Next week, we'll return to our regularly scheduled programming with your favorite rabbinic banter with Rabbi Akiva Balak and Rabbi Daniel Goldberg. Our one pasuk for this week's Parsha, Parshas Ki Tavo, for this special episode, together with my better half on relationships in the Parsha, on some Perek Chavav, Pasuk Yud, chapter 26, verse 10. Parshas Ki Tavo opens up with the mitzvah of Bikurim, the mitzvah to bring first fruits from the produce that one grows in the land of Israel. And these first fruits are brought to the Beis HaMikdash, and there is a particular ceremony that is performed together with the Kohen. And part of that ceremony is a declaration that the Jewish farmer makes when he brings his Bikurim, when he presents it in the Beis HaMikdash. That declaration is really a short synopsis of Jewish history. It gives meaning to this moment, and the pasuk that we are focusing on in that declaration is a conclusion. ועתה, הנה הבאתי, and now, here, I have brought ראשית האדמה אשר נתתה לי Hashem, the first fruits of the land that Hashem has given me. And so our pasuk contains the conclusion of that declaration and then the instructions. ועתה, הנה הבאתי ראשית האדמה אשר נתתה לי Hashem, and now here I have brought my first fruits of the land that Hashem has given me. That is the concluding phrase of his declaration. And the second half of the pasuk says, והנחתו, and he places that basket of first fruits, לפני Hashem אלהיך, place it before Hashem your God, והשתחוית, לפני Hashem אלהיך, and you bow down. Shoshana, you picked this pasuk. What did you find in it?
So looking at this whole section, I chose this pasuk specifically because on this pasuk, the Rashbam comments on the words, asher natatta li, that you, God, gave to me. And he comments that these words that the person recites when bringing Bikurim reinforces that the land of Israel and its blessings were gifted from God. What he is saying explicitly is what we're basically told in this whole section, that the land of Israel is a Yerusha. It actually uses that word in the very first pasuk. We inherit the land. The Rashbam's words are, basketcthe zachiti ba. Because of your kindness, God, I've been blessed to receive it. What I'd like to explore is an idea that actually builds off a discussion that you guys were having as a sidebar a couple of episodes ago. The three of you were talking about the pros and cons of generational wealth, of gifting our children wealth that they didn't work for. And I'd like to deepen and broaden that discussion and, of course, connect it to our topic of relationships. The research on inherited wealth actually reveals a really nuanced picture. On the one hand, there are many studies which support what we probably know intuitively, that inherited wealth actually does come with costs, some of which include a potential sense of entitlement, a diminished work ethic, a faster hedonic treadmill, which is a numbing to the pleasures you already have, and an escalating need for more and quicker. And it can even lead to a diminished sense of self, as a person can question whether they could have accomplished on their own what they were gifted. So that's one half of the research. On the other hand, the research also shows that there are real benefits to generational wealth, to giving our children a significant financial cushion. And those benefits in the research are reflected in a very significant psychological shift that happens when a person knows in actuality that they have financial security. And with that shift, we find something incredibly important, which is that people start making decisions which are much more values-driven. They make decisions based on what is truly important to them, what they've really established as their values. Obviously, the alternative would be not necessarily making decisions that are absent of values, but a mix of their values along with anxiety, and fear, and what I like to call the golden handcuffs of responsibility. Things that they feel they have no choice but to do because they have responsibilities that they need to make sure they take care of. So what the research shows us is that the same gift can really cut in either direction. And the difference will lie in how that gift is handed over. I really believe that reading our psukim and the pasuk where the Rashbam elucidates on the verbal acknowledgement that we were gifted the land of Israel is asking us to spend some real time thinking about the benefits of passing down generational wealth. And even more importantly, what the Torah gives us, what God gives us, is the framework for how to ensure that the gifts we receive actually cut towards the blessings, towards the pros of what this can offer us. And what's amazing to me is that what the research shows on how to ensure that is exactly the formula the Torah gave us long before that research. The research is very clear that passing down generational wealth has to come with behavioral insight. It needs to be accompanied with a sense of identity, with a sense of responsibility, and with expectations. And in a lot of the research where they interviewed second and third generation of children who inherited family wealth and yet were still working, still had advanced college degrees, still felt like they needed to show up with a sense of responsibility, when they were asked what drives their motivation to keep working, they all reported the exact same thing. They were handed down not only generational wealth, they were handed down the story of where it came from and the expectations of what they were now entrusted to do with it. It's an amazing thing when you see these qualitative and quantitative research studies that reflect exactly the formula the Torah gave us. Because go back to the psukim, take a look at that. What the Torah asks is that we tune into and we say out loud the story of our history, the original covenant established with the avod and the imahot. The Torah asks, in addition, that we always remind ourselves of our responsibility towards others when we are the recipients of gifts.
What you're describing, I think, is really a broader Jewish value, namely that our entire identity, our entire destiny is a gift. It makes us unique. It endows us with a special relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam that if we're not careful with how we talk about that relationship could really come across as arrogant and entitled towards other peoples. And I think Chazal are very conscious of this when they highlight the fact that David HaMelech descends from Rus HaMoaviyah, that we descend from families that had all sorts of issues and controversies, and we don't hide that fact. We don't hide the fact that we come from humble beginnings. And in fact, the holiday that celebrates Jewish identity the most, Pesach and the Pesach Seder, says, Maskil begenus, u'mesayim b'shvach. Whatever we want to say about us as a people, we have to start with the genus, that we came from idolaters. Mitchila ovdei avodah zarah haya avosenu. And we came from where everyone else came. And because we have a special mission, we have to be anchored in that humility. So really, it's a broader concept, which I think beautifully applies more specifically to this concept of what we possess and the actual material gifts that Hashem has given us and how we're supposed to look at them.
I love what you're saying because it encourages us not to get stuck in either the first stage of our journey or the second stage. The first stage is our humble beginnings. The second stage is the stage of being gifted, of having. And our job is always to keep those two in mind, in balance, with a sense of responsibility. We always have to tune into our humble beginnings, and we have to be able to show up and take advantage of the gifts that God has given us with that sense of responsibility and with that sense of humility. It's a beautiful, fuller picture to what I was talking about.
Yeah, it reminds me of a word that I've used in different contexts, and that is custodians. That when it comes to the land of Israel, the halachos of Shemitah and Yovel make sure to remind us that we don't really own the land. Hashem owns the land, and even when we buy and sell it, really we're just custodians, and it goes back on a regular cycle to original owners that inherited it. The same thing for the role of the Kohanim, right? The priests don't own the Beis HaMikdash. They don't own the service. They were given this special job to be custodians of Hashem's home, to be custodians of that direct relationship between Klal Yisrael and Hashem. It's seeing ourselves and anybody who has a special job being able to see themselves as the humble servant.
And it's so nuanced because on the one hand, obviously we want to sit in a place of feeling tremendous gratitude for the gifts that God gives us. And at the same time, it's a little bit of a recognition that if we're abiding by the covenant and doing what we're supposed to be doing, it's almost like it was coming to us. We shouldn't be making too much of it. And that's a very nuanced road to follow when it comes to our materialistic blessings. I do want to get back to relationships because part of our legacy, part of our responsibility is what we do with our material blessings and how we take care of the people around us. And sitting, I mean this, I've learned this from you. I definitely did not come into the rabbinic life embodying this, but from you, I've really learned the privilege of being able to sit in a community and be called upon to help. And from that angle, as well as sitting as a therapist, I cannot tell you how many people live day to day without a financial security cushion, without knowing that they have anyone, not a family member, not a community member, who could and would bail them out of hardship should they need it. And the anxiety and the fear that this generates is so real and so debilitating in so many different aspects. And if they don't have a family member, a neighbor, the place that every single member of our community should be able to go is exactly there. They should be able to turn to their community, to a place where they know that they worked just as hard as the next guy, but weren't blessed with the same success, which is far more common than I think we acknowledge out loud. For those who have been blessed with a financial cushion or who've made it on their own, it's hard to see somebody who's worked just as hard and hasn't been able to make it. And I see that constantly. And they need to be able to turn to the community for support.
What do you mean by it's hard for them? Is this a criticism or is this just an observation?
I'm going to turn to my own upbringing. My parents came to this country with literally nothing. My father grew up in a one-room apartment with 3 siblings. They put a curtain down the middle of the living room to create 2 bedrooms. He didn't speak the language. He came when he was 11, 12 years old. He barely went to school because he showed up for a couple hours and the rest of the time he had to go work in a nearby store to help pay the rent. And he found ways to establish a certain financial security for his family. And I grew up with that work ethic, with never taking anything for granted, with, thank God, turning and helping others. But I think also what came across, not explicitly, but there was a felt sense of we found a way. Everybody should be able to find that way. We had nothing and we found a way. And I think it's hard. It's hard to then see other people who started out as you did and haven't found a way. And I'm not talking about people who aren't working, who aren't trying. I'm talking about people who are getting up early in the morning, going to sleep late at night, and really applying themselves with their abilities all day long. And they do not have the same financial success that the person next door was able to accomplish. It's hard to understand that implicitly when you have lived that yourself.
Got it. And I think the Torah highlights that specifically when it says, "Kochi v'otzim yadi asa li'asach hayel hazeh," that Hashem warns us that we'll be tempted to look at our own accomplishments and say, we did this. The Torah is not saying that one should not feel pride in what they've accomplished. But I think what the Torah is warning is exactly what you're saying. And that is that just because you were able to accomplish, don't think someone else with the exact same set of circumstances would have accomplished as well. It's different for everybody.
And not only that, the Ron actually in one of his essays writes that it actually is a Jewish value to take credit for what we've been able to accomplish, so long as we remember that the inherent talents that allowed us to do that were God-gifted. You have to remember that we're born with certain talents. We're born with certain wirings. We're raised in certain environments. And so if the factors come together in a way that allow us to accomplish, wonderful. Wonderful. Take a look at oneself and say, thank God. I was given factors that allowed me to do this. I worked hard to enable it. There's always a piece that wasn't exclusively mine. It's so nuanced. And additionally, I wanted to point out also that, yes, the Torah also in many contexts warns us and puts us on guard against that first half of the research that I presented, that there are real potential costs in the other direction of inheriting wealth and sitting in a place of entitlement. So again, it's a nuanced picture. It demands a tremendous amount of self-awareness, of insight, of honest self-reflection. I'm going to use that phrase. I apologize. Compassionate self-reflection. Taking an honest look within oneself at the whole picture in the context of your family, of your community, of the schools you've attended, just continuously broadening all the factors that have contributed to you being able to accomplish what you've been able to accomplish. And the end result of that, again, is a sense of loyalty to our historical beginnings, ending with a sense of responsibility towards the people around us. That is our legacy as a Jewish people.
So 2 questions. First of all, can you sharpen for me a little bit when you highlight this lesson in the context of relationships? So what exactly do you mean? You mean that this kind of self-awareness and recognition, how things are different for everyone, are you saying that helps us navigate relationships, that helps us foster better relationships when we kind of have a clear picture on things?
That's correct. I'm saying 2 things, one a little bit more internal and one a little bit more external. The internal is the thought process and the emotions that come up as we look at other people who reach out for help. It's understandable to have an internal reaction of, well, have they worked as hard? Have they tried as hard? I also came from nothing. And again, I'm not saying this from an arrogant perspective, and I've been able to make it. And so it's understandable to have that initial internal thought process come up. We want to notice that within ourselves and remind ourselves that it's never, ever that simple. And even in a relationship where we can make a lot of comparisons, we're always missing some of the internal factors. A person's wiring, a person's inborn abilities. Those are factors we never get a real viewing of because they happen inside of another human being. So that's the internal aspect. The external aspect is how we then respond to that internal dialogue, which is a recognition that I have been blessed for all the factors we've talked about. And part of our legacy of being blessed is taking care of the people around me in a dignified and an enabling. And when I say enabling, I mean getting them on their feet and doing so in a dignified way in that type of an approach.
And my second question is, why do you have to apologize before you say compassionate self-reflection?
I think the trend today leans in less and less self-reflection that may bring up thoughts and emotions that don't feel as comfortable. They may bring up a mixed bag of feelings and thoughts that are not as comfortable to sit with. And so I'm thinking about that reality as I apologize, because on the one hand, I'm encouraging you to go there and let that stuff come up. And on the other hand, knowing that there's a natural resistance not to go there. And again, I'll speak for my own personal self. When we work hard and we sacrifice for the hours we throw into work, and then we hear something that says, think about if you're really giving in a way that feels like it's making a dent in what you have, or really taking away time you wish you had for yourself.
Are you giving till it hurts?
I wouldn't even say till it hurts. I would say, are you giving till it feels...
Are you giving in a way that is sacrificing?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you sacrifice something.
Absolutely. And again, sacrificing something we do all the time for the things that are important to us, for the things that make us feel good, for the things that give us turnaround feedback. Are we willing to do that for things that come from a sense of responsibility? This is going to be between me and myself, really between me and God, let's be honest, which it can be feedback, but may not feel as immediate as some of the other feedback. But it's between me and God. It's a responsibility that I have, even if it doesn't come with any of the positive, feel-good pieces of feedback that we have become accustomed to needing to be able to push ourselves in ways that feel like we're making a sacrifice.
All right. Beautiful. Shkoch.
Thank you.
Good Shabbos.